The wrench slipped from my grease-stained fingers and clanged against the concrete floor of my garage. Sarah's words hung in the air like exhaust fumes, toxic and suffocating. Just one night, Jake. One fantasy before we settle down and start a family. I wiped my hands on an old rag, buying time while my brain processed what my wife of 3 years had just asked. The carburetor I'd been rebuilding suddenly seemed less complicated than this conversation. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "You want a hall pass? One night to screw around before we get serious about having kids?" Sarah shifted uncomfortably in the doorway, her designer heels clicking against the threshold. Even at 10 p.m., she looked like she'd stepped out of a law firm commercial, which, given her recent promotion to senior associate, wasn't far from the truth. "Don't make it sound so crude, Jake. It's just, I've only been with you since college. Sometimes I wonder what else is out there." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What else is out there?" "Like what, Sarah? Like your little lunch dates with Brad Morrison?" Her face went pale. "Bingo. I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. The same Brad Morrison who's been texting you at all hours. The same one who happens to own half the new developments in town." I'd seen the messages. Sarah thought she was clever, but she'd never been good with technology. Her phone synced to our shared iPad, and I'd noticed the pattern weeks ago. Late-night texts, deleted call logs, sudden work emergencies that required her to dress up and smell like expensive perfume. "Jake, you're being paranoid." "Am I?" I stood up, wiping my hands one final time. "Tell you what, Sarah. You want your fantasy? Go for it. But don't expect me to be here when you get back." She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. You want to explore your options? Explore away. But I'm done being your safety net." Sarah's composure cracked slightly. "You're overreacting. It's just one night. It doesn't mean anything." "If it doesn't mean anything, then why do it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. For someone who made a living arguing in court, she sure was speechless now. "Fine," she said finally. "Maybe I will." "Good. Don't let me stop you." She turned on her heel and stalked back toward the house. I heard her heels on the kitchen tile, then the slam of our bedroom door upstairs. I pulled out my phone and dialed Tommy Kowalski, my old boxing coach, who now ran Mickey's bar downtown. "Tommy, it's Jake. I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves a GPS tracker and a tow truck." Tommy chuckled. "Brother, you're either about to do something brilliant or something that'll land you in jail." "Probably both." 3 days later, Sarah made her move. She'd been cold and distant since our garage conversation, speaking to me only when necessary. On Friday night, she announced she was going out with the girls from work. "Don't wait up," she said, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. Wouldn't dream of it. The GPS tracker I'd installed in her car was military grade, a leftover from my days as an army mechanic before I opened Jake's auto repair. It fed directly to an app on my phone, showing me exactly where she was at all times. Sarah left at 8 p.m. Instead of heading toward downtown where her work friends usually hung out, she drove straight to the Riverside Motel, a rundown place on the edge of town that rented rooms by the hour. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then followed. The motel parking lot was dimly lit, half the neon sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. Sarah's silver BMW sat next to a flashy red Corvette that screamed midlife crisis. Brad Morrison's car. I parked across the street and waited. Through the thin curtains of room 12, I could see shadows moving. My wife and her fantasy. The rage I'd been suppressing for weeks finally boiled over. But instead of kicking down the door like some jealous husband in a bad movie, I did something better. I called my buddy Pete, who ran the night shift at Morrison Towing. "Pete, it's Jake. I've got a job for you." "This late?" "Emergency repo." Silver BMW, license plate SAR4829. It's at the Riverside Motel. That's not on tonight's list. It is now. Trust me on this one. Pete owed me for rebuilding his truck's transmission last month. 20 minutes later, his tow truck rumbled into the motel parking lot. I watched from across the street as Pete hooked up Sarah's BMW. The sound of the winch must have carried through the paper-thin walls because the curtains in room 12 twitched. Sarah burst out of the room, her hair disheveled and her blouse buttoned wrong. "Hey! That's my car." Pete, bless him, played his part perfectly. "Sorry, ma'am. Repo order. You'll need to contact the financing company." "There's no repo order. My husband and I own that car outright." "Take it up with management, lady." Brad Morrison emerged from the room, shirtless and looking confused. He was exactly what I'd expected, mid-40s, soft around the middle, with the kind of artificial tan that came from a salon. "What's going on out here?" "They're stealing my car." I chose that moment to step out of the shadows. "Not stealing, Sarah. Repossessing." Her face went white. "Jake? What are you doing here?" "Watching my wife live out her fantasy." I looked at Morrison, who was trying to suck in his gut. "Brad, right? Nice to finally meet you in person." Morrison's Adam's apple bobbed. "Look, man, I can explain." "No need." Sarah wanted to explore her options. I'm just helping her explore the consequences. The tow truck pulled away with Sarah's BMW, leaving her stranded in a motel parking lot with her married boyfriend. The poetic justice was beautiful. "How am I supposed to get home?" Sarah demanded. I shrugged. "Call an Uber. Or maybe Brad can give you a ride. Oh wait, his wife might wonder where he's been." Morrison's face went even paler. "My wife doesn't know about this. She doesn't know about a lot of things, I bet." I turned and walked back to my truck, leaving them standing there in the flickering neon light. Phase 1 was complete. Small towns are like echo chambers. Secrets bounce around until everyone knows everything. By Monday morning, half of Millfield had heard about Sarah's midnight towing incident. The other half heard about it by lunch. I was under the hood of Mrs. Patterson's Buick when Tommy stopped by the shop. "You're the talk of the town, brother." "Good talk or bad talk?" "Depends on who you ask. The wives think you're a genius. The husbands are scared you gave their women ideas." I wiped my hands on a rag. "What about Sarah?" "Haven't seen her. Word is she's been holed up at her office trying to keep her head down." That made sense. Sarah's law firm was old-school conservative. Partners like Harrison Blackwell didn't appreciate their associates making headlines for the wrong reasons. "And Morrison?" Tommy grinned. "That's the best part. Somebody, and I'm not saying who, might have mentioned to his wife that he was seen at the Riverside Motel Friday night. Somebody with a big mouth and a love of gossip? Somebody who runs a bar and hears everything. I had to admire Tommy's handiwork. Diane Morrison was known for her temper and her connections to every social circle in town. If she knew about Brad's affair, it wouldn't stay secret long. "You know this is just the beginning, right?" Tommy said. "Sarah's not going to take this lying down." "Let her try. I've got nothing left to lose." That wasn't entirely true. I had my business, my reputation, and my pride. But Sarah had already damaged the first two, and the third was hanging by a thread. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." -S. I showed it to Tommy. "Speak of the devil." "You going to respond?" "Eventually. But first, I've got some research to do." That afternoon, I drove to the county courthouse. Public records are a beautiful thing. They tell you everything about a person's business dealings, property ownership, and legal troubles. Brad Morrison's file was thick. 3 failed businesses, 2 bankruptcies, and a handful of lawsuits from disgruntled clients. His current real estate venture was leveraged to the hilt dependent on a development deal that required city council approval. City council approval that could be influenced by public opinion. I made copies of everything and headed home. Sarah's BMW was in the driveway. She must have paid the towing fees and storage costs. That little stunt had cost her at least $500. She was waiting in the kitchen when I walked in. "We need to talk." "So you said in your text." Sarah looked tired. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. For the first time in months, she looked like the woman I'd married. "This has gone far enough, Jake." "Has it?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it's just getting started." "What do you want?" "An apology?" "Fine, I'm sorry. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" "You planned this, Sarah. You asked for permission to cheat, and when I called your bluff, you did it anyway." She sat down heavily at our kitchen table. "I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" "Just the intimacy." "Or were you planning to leave me for Brad?" "It wasn't about Brad. It was about me. About feeling trapped." "Trapped? In what? Our marriage? Our life together? In this town? In this house? In this version of myself that I never chose?" There it was, the truth finally coming out. "So this is about you being too good for Millfield. Too good for me." "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." Sarah rubbed her temples. "I don't know what I meant. I just know that I'm not happy." "And screwing Brad Morrison was supposed to fix that?" I thought it might help me figure out what I wanted." "And what do you want, Sarah?" She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I want to go back to before this happened. I want us to be okay." For a moment I almost believed her. Almost let myself think we could work through this. Then I remembered the GPS tracker showing her car at the motel. The image of her running out disheveled and guilty. It's too late for that. It doesn't have to be. We can go to counseling. We can work this out. No, we can't. Because this isn't about one mistake, Sarah. This is about who you really are. And who you really are is someone who thinks she deserves better than what she has. I stood up and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "Out. Don't wait up." The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Sarah tried to act like nothing had happened, while I systematically dismantled the life we'd built together. I moved my clothes to the spare bedroom. I opened a separate bank account. I started eating dinner at Mickey's bar instead of coming home. The whole town was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Some people sided with Sarah, saying I was being cruel and vindictive. Others thought I was justified. Most just enjoyed the drama. Brad Morrison's development deal hit a snag when someone, again not saying who, sent copies of his bankruptcy filings to every member of the city council. His wife filed for divorce and took half his assets. His business partners started asking uncomfortable questions about their investment. Sarah's work life wasn't going much better. Harrison Blackwell called her into his office for a discussion about professional conduct. She came home that day looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "They're considering letting me go," she said. I looked up from the newspaper I was reading. "That's too bad." "Too bad?" "Jake, this is my career we're talking about. Should have thought about that before you decided to live out your fantasy. This is insane. You're destroying everything we've worked for." "No, Sarah. You destroyed it. I'm just cleaning up the mess." She stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. "I don't know who you are anymore. I'm the same person I've always been. You're just seeing me clearly for the first time." That weekend, I ran into Marcus Webb at the hardware store. Marcus had been my best friend since high school, best man at my wedding, godfather to the kids Sarah and I had planned to have. "Jake, we need to talk." "About what?" "About what you're doing to Sarah." I set down the box of screws I'd been examining. "What I'm doing to Sarah? This whole revenge thing, it's gone too far." "Has it?" Because she cheated on me and I'm the bad guy? She made a mistake. People make mistakes. Some mistakes you don't come back from. Marcus grabbed my arm. She's my friend too, Jake. I've known her almost as long as I've known you. Then maybe you should have talked to her before she decided to screw around. Maybe if you'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. The hardware store went quiet. Everyone was staring at us. Excuse me? You heard me. Sarah's been unhappy for months. Anyone with eyes could see it. But you were too busy with your cars and your beer to notice. I felt something snap inside my chest. So it's my fault she cheated? I'm saying maybe you should look in the mirror before you destroy her life. Her life? What about my life, Marcus? What about the 3 years I spent thinking I was married to someone who loved me? She does love you, you idiot. That's why she's fighting so hard to save your marriage. By sleeping with Brad Morrison? By trying to figure out what she wanted before it was too late. I stepped closer to Marcus. We were the same height, but I had 40 pounds of muscle on him from years of working with my hands. You know what, Marcus? I think you should stay out of this. Or what? Or you might find out that I'm not as nice as you remember. Marcus's wife, Jennifer, appeared at his elbow. Marcus, let's go. No, Jen. Jake needs to hear this. Marcus, please. Tell him, Jen. Tell him how Sarah cried on your shoulder for months about how lonely she was. How neglected she felt. Jennifer looked uncomfortable. Marcus, this isn't our business. It became our business when Jake decided to humiliate Sarah in front of the whole town. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Humiliate her? She humiliated herself. I just made sure everyone saw it. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. Something Sarah should have tried. Marcus shook his head. You know what? I was wrong about you. I thought you were better than this. Better than what? Better than standing up for myself? Better than refusing to be a doormat? Better than destroying someone you claim to love? I don't love her anymore, Marcus. That died the night she asked for permission to cheat. Marcus stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away, Jennifer hurrying after him. I finished my shopping in silence, aware that everyone in the store was watching me. Let them watch. Let them judge. I was done caring what people thought. But as I drove home, Marcus's words echoed in my head. Had I been a bad husband? Had I driven Sarah to cheat? Number. That was just guilt talking. Sarah made her choice. Now she could live with the consequences. 2 months after the motel incident, Sarah filed for divorce. She wanted half of everything: the house, the business, our savings. Her lawyer, some hotshot from the city, painted me as an abusive husband who had systematically destroyed his wife's life out of spite. My lawyer, a local guy named Pete Kowalski, Tommy's cousin, wasn't impressed. She's got no case, Jake. Adultery is still grounds for divorce in this state. She cheated. You have proof. End of story. What about the business? You owned it before you got married. She's entitled to half the appreciation in value, but that's not much given the economy. And the house? Joint property. But again, she's the one who broke the marriage contract. Judge Morrison, no relation to Brad, by the way, doesn't like cheaters. The divorce proceedings dragged on for months. Sarah's lawyer tried every trick in the book, but the facts were the facts. She had cheated. I had evidence, and no amount of legal maneuvering could change that. Meanwhile, Brad Morrison's life continued to unravel. His development deal fell through when the city council voted it down. His divorce cost him his house and his business. Word around town was that he was thinking about leaving Millfield altogether. Sarah wasn't doing much better. Harrison Blackwell's law firm had restructured her out of a job. She was working for a small practice on the other side of town, making a third of her old salary. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt empty. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for a Friday in November. Sarah and I sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, not looking at each other. Her parents had driven up from Florida. They glared at me like I was some kind of monster. Maybe I was. Judge Morrison reviewed the settlement agreement. I got the house and the business. Sarah got her car and half our savings, about $12,000. She also got to keep her student loan debt, which was more than the cash she was walking away with. Mr. Kowalski, do you accept the terms of this agreement? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Kowalski, do you accept the terms of this agreement? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Your Honor. Very well. This court hereby grants a decree of divorce. You're both free to remarry. Just like that, it was over. Sarah's parents helped her pack her things that weekend. I stayed at Tommy's bar while they cleared out her stuff. When I came home Sunday evening, the house felt like a museum, everything in its place, but no life in it. I found a note on the kitchen table. Jake, I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't blame you. I made the worst mistake of my life, and I'll have to live with it forever. I hope someday you can find happiness again. I hope we both can. Sarah. I crumpled up the note and threw it in the trash. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was working late in the shop when Tommy stopped by with a six-pack and some news. Thought you should hear this from me first. What now? Sarah's leaving town. Got a job with some law firm in Chicago. I didn't look up from the engine I was rebuilding. Good for her. And Brad Morrison's already gone, moved to Florida last week. Also, good for him. Tommy cracked open 2 beers and handed me one. You know, brother, I've been thinking about this whole thing. Don't hurt yourself. I'm serious. You got your revenge. You destroyed both their lives. Question is, was it worth it? I finally looked up. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, look at yourself, Jake. When's the last time you smiled? When's the last time you did anything besides work and drink? I'm fine. No, you're not. You're miserable. And the worst part is, I don't think Sarah cheating on you made you this way. I think you were already heading here. I set down my wrench. What are you trying to say? I'm saying maybe Marcus was right. Maybe Sarah didn't cheat because she was a bad person. Maybe she cheated because she was drowning, and you were too busy being angry at the world to throw her a life preserver. So this is my fault? I'm saying maybe it's nobody's fault. Maybe you two just brought out the worst in each other. I drank my beer and thought about that. Sarah had been unhappy for months before the affair. I'd seen the signs, the late nights at work, the distance, the way she looked at me sometimes like I was a stranger. But instead of talking to her about it, I'd retreated into my own world. My shop, my cars, my routine. I'd let her drift away, then acted surprised when she found someone else to talk to. Even if that's true, I said finally, she still cheated. She still lied to me. Yeah, she did. And you still destroyed her life. So I guess you're even. We drank in silence for a while, listening to the wind rattle the garage doors. You know what the really messed up part is? I said. What's that? I still love her. After everything she did, everything I did, I still love her. Tommy nodded. I know you do, brother. That's what makes this whole thing so sad. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery where my parents were buried. I hadn't been there since the funeral, but I needed somewhere quiet to think. My dad had been a mechanic too, back when cars were simpler and marriages lasted forever. He'd loved my mom for 43 years until cancer took her. At the funeral, he'd told me the secret to a long marriage. Love isn't a feeling, son. It's a choice. You choose to love someone every day, even when they make it hard. Especially when they make it hard. I'd forgotten that lesson somewhere along the way. I'd stopped choosing to love Sarah long before she stopped choosing to love me. But it was too late now. She was gone, starting over in Chicago. Brad Morrison was gone too, probably nursing his wounds in some Florida retirement community, and I was alone in Millfield, surrounded by the wreckage of the life I'd helped destroy. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Sarah's number. I'd kept it, even though she'd changed it after the divorce. Her new number was on the legal paperwork. I started to type a message. Sarah, I'm sorry. For all of it. I hope you find happiness in Chicago. Then I deleted it. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Some mistakes can't be undone. I drove home to my empty house and my empty life, knowing that I'd won the war but lost everything that mattered. The revenge was complete. Sarah's career was destroyed, her reputation ruined, her marriage over. Brad Morrison's business had failed, his marriage had ended, his life in Millfield was finished. I had gotten everything I wanted, and it felt like nothing at all. But as I sat in my driveway, looking at the house that was now mine alone, I realized something. The empty feeling wasn't about losing Sarah. It wasn't about the divorce or the loneliness or the guilt. It was about finally understanding who I really was. I wasn't the wronged husband seeking justice. I wasn't the victim of my wife's betrayal. I was the architect of my own misery. The man who chose revenge over reconciliation, destruction over healing, pride over love. And for the first time in 2 years, that knowledge didn't make me angry. It made me free. I walked into my house, poured myself a drink, and started planning what came next. Because this story wasn't about Sarah's betrayal or my revenge. It was about what happens when you finally stop lying to yourself about who you are. And who I was, apparently, was someone who could burn down everything he claimed to love and call it justice. The funny thing was, I was okay with that. Sarah wanted her fantasy. Brad wanted his midlife crisis. Marcus and Jennifer wanted their moral superiority. They all got exactly what they wanted. And so did I.